Hello again, everyone. My name's Curt Conrad, and this is West 4th and Goal, a podcast serving the high school football community in North Central Ohio. We are coming to you from IdeaWorks Podcast Studio on West 4th Street in downtown Mansfield. If you're a small business owner in need of a workspace, go to IdeaWorksOhio.com to schedule a tour. With me, as always, is my co-host, Noah Jones. And Noah, the third member of our team, Zach Heiser, he went on the disabled list earlier today.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what happened because everyone in this room went to the same restaurant, and he came back with supposedly food poisoning.
Yeah,
so
he's the only one.
We're waiting for the proper diagnosis.
Right, he's the only one on the shelf. So we went to the bench and got a pinch hitter, and we're happy to welcome pinch hitter David Yoder, a.k.a.
Amish Thunder.
Amish Thunder. David, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Before we get started, I would also like to thank Two Cousins Pizza. They're the official pizza of West 4th and Goal. Andy McIntyre and his crew never fail to satisfy. You can visit twocousinspizzaco.com to check out the daily specials or call 419-522-2211 to place an order. Or you can stop downtown at 103 North Main is the shop here downtown. You won't be disappointed. Thanks again to Two Cousins Pizza, the official pizza of West 4th and Goal. And while we're at it, thanks again to everyone who's listening to the show out there. Judging by the analytics, there are a lot of you listening. We've had more than 10,000 downloads through the first 3 weeks, which is, David, this is your field of expertise. That seems like a pretty good number, right?
Yeah, it's really significant. The fans of the show have set records for our publication, and probably those are pretty healthy numbers.
Right, and I don't think any of us really imagined that we would have this sort of traction this early. This is our second season, but no,
I'd still call us noobs.
Absolutely. We've had three great guests this season. Kate Stover from Lex, an Ohio State recruit, Clay Caudell from Mansfield Senior, who's got several Division I offers, and McGuire Albert from Shelby, the quarterback. He joined us last week. As awesome as those guys were, I think it's pretty safe to say that this week's guest is my favorite one that we'll have or that we'll ever have. He's the quarterback and an All-Ohio safety at Hillsdale High School. His name is Alex Becker, and he just so happens to be my nephew. Alex's father and my wife are brother and sister. But before I'm accused of nepotism, it should be noted that Alex's football resume speaks for itself. He had more than 100 tackles last year. He matched the school's single-season record with 7 interceptions, and he helped Hillsdale get to a regional championship game, which you guys probably don't know a whole lot about the history of Hillsdale football. That certainly wasn't ever even a thought for a lot of years. But they've got the program really working well over there. And Alex, thanks for coming out. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we get into the football stuff, it's a kind of a proud uncle moment. I'd like to talk about what Alex has done in the classroom.
Okay.
He is a 3-point. What is that? 1B in college or in high school?
Yeah, I had 1B.
I had 1B in college or in high school too.
Everything
I just had several other ones as well.
Yeah, a 3.988 I think is what it comes out to. He scored a 30 on his ACT. Those are some pretty lofty numbers, so that's certainly a something we're awful proud of. And Alex, how important is the classroom? Is that something? Obviously, you take that real serious.
Yeah. Everyone would like to think that sports is the main thing, but really you're a student athlete. Student comes first, so that's what you need to focus on, and that's what I always prided myself in, and that's what my main goal was, is to do well in the classroom.
Now you and we were talking off air a little bit. Most of your classes are done at the high school level. You're probably not taking anything at the high school anymore?
I only had one more class I needed my senior year to graduate, and instead of going to the high school to take that, I decided to take it through the college so I could get a college credit as well instead of just going to the high school for it.
And you're over in Mansfield 3 times a week at Ohio State's Branch campus. When you get to college, do you know what are you going to be like a sophomore when you get there? Do you know what's going to transfer and what's not, or how's that work?
It varies depending on what school you go to. Because I'm getting my credits through a state school, if I go to a state school, then they should transfer directly, which would probably give me sophomore status.
David, you know a little bit about Ohio State. Yeah, how's that going to work for him, you know?
Yeah, exactly what Alex is saying. He's taken advantage of something our campuses out at North Central State and Ohio State offer is a chance for high school students to combine their studies, and you can essentially go from a high school senior to sophomore rank your first year of college. Now with Alex's football future, he's probably not going to go to the local campus
Sure.
unless decisions change. But
Seems like a great way to save money, though.
Yeah, absolutely. It took me a little longer than the required 4 years to get through college. I was on the 5-year plan at Ohio University. So
same.
well, good. And before, and this is something Noah and I talked a little bit about. Noah, I'm sure you want to jump in here, but it's a big couple of weeks here for Alex. He's got the Ashland County Fair coming up, and he has done some pretty cool things over there. Noah, you want to?
Yeah, man. Just tell us a little bit. I understand that you show stuff, and last year you were a grand champion of sheep, right?
Yep. I've been showing market sheep at the Ashland County Fair for the last 9 years, I think.
Okay.
Last year I had a very great year. I managed to win grand champion, market lamb, and I also won supreme showman.
So I'm from St. Louis. I've never owned a sheep. What makes a grand champion sheep?
Good genetics is the best foundation, but then just a lot of hard work, the right nutrition, and being out there with the animal at a pretty constant rate to make it to the best of its ability.
There's pretty good money in being the grand champion.
Yeah,
right?
I was very lucky that the pipeline was coming through the county, so they made it out to the county fair for the auctions, and they were very grateful and very kind to all the grand champions.
What does that money go to? Next year's purchases, or?
Yeah, they go on to purchasing my land for the next year, and then the rest of it goes into my college fund.
Cool. Well, college fund. Sounds like you've got way more ahead of you than I did when I was your age.
Right. And the neat thing about what I do is that you get to see athletes at a pretty young age. You know, I mean, you get to see. I've been watching Cade Stover at Lexington since he was a freshman. I mean, going way back, I remember. I mean, when people think of LeBron James, they think of him as a Cavalier of this NBA. I think of him as a big, long, gangly freshman from St. Vincent St. Mary who was playing at a holiday tournament at Mapleton High School over in Ashland County. So I mean, it's neat to watch guys, you know, develop year after year. In this situation, which is a little unusual. I mean, Alex and I were playing catch, you know, when he was 7, 8 years old. So it's been really, really exciting for me to see him, you know, develop, you know, year after year. And Alex, I don't know what you think about the relationship between you and I, but I mean, it's for me, it's, I mean, honestly, I mean, for me, it's a really neat thing. It's beyond what I normally do as a sports writer. I mean, that's my nephew out there playing, which is kind of a special thing. I mean, fire away, man.
Yeah, you've just always been around. You've been a big part of my sports career since I was a really young age. My close family, like my parents, aren't really that into sports, and so you were always my outlet to get into sports when I couldn't get that at home necessarily.
Aw. And you came in as a freshman at Hillsdale, and you lettered as a freshman, primarily special teams, right?
Yeah, punt and kickoff.
Right, and then as you know, that's the year that Hillsdale, I don't think they made the playoffs that year. I think 6-4 that year. The following year as a sophomore, you took on a bigger role defensively, I think especially. You guys were a playoff team. And then last year, you kind of got more involved in the offense, too, and you guys made it to the regional championship game. I mean, did you ever sense that, you know, when you were coming in early that you guys were building something big with you and your classmates?
Yeah, we were in junior high. My class always had a lot of success, and we knew that the class ahead of us had a lot of athletes. So we knew that once we got into our upper class years, we would see a lot of success.
Right, and I mean, your sophomore year, you guys make it to the playoffs. You play a team, I think, who was it, Cuyahoga Heights?
Yes.
Division 7, eventual state runner-up. You guys, and I covered that game, you guys, I think maybe you surprised yourself that night because you're coming into a game like that, you're thinking, you know, these guys are, you know, they're gonna dump truck us, you know, they're gonna bury us. And that was a close game at halftime, and you guys were right there with them. I mean, did you learn something about yourself, I guess, that night?
Yeah, that really showed us that no matter who you're playing, if you come out and compete, then you can show everyone just how great you can do, and that just really showed us that we actually are a really good team and we deserve to be there.
And then last year, you guys not only get into the playoffs, you win 2 playoff games, which doesn't happen very often over that way. I think there's only been one other time where Hillsdale has reached a regional championship game. I mean, to get there is one thing. Then to get there and win is something else entirely. I mean, is it that much more difficult, I guess? I mean, was the road more difficult, do you think? Or how do you look back on last year?
It was just exciting. Yeah, my sophomore year, we made it to a playoff game. I played in the first playoff game, and it was stressful. It was my first time there. It was something new. The school was not used to it. Making it there my junior year, it was just a lot more exciting, and especially once we started winning games, it was just something new for our school. So just a lot of excitement in the air.
And we'll delve into it a little deeper here later. But I mean, you guys play in a regional championship game, and you play a Liberty Benton team. Just playing, and they kind of. I mean, you were able to hang with them there, for a time. But I mean, I think their athleticism and your physicality just eventually, wore you guys down a little bit. Does playing in a game like that, does that show you where you need to be, I guess?
Yeah, that gives you the goal for the next year. I mean, every year we want to build on what we had the year before. So the year before we made it to one playoff game. Last year we made it to 3. So this year we try to take a step further.
Right. And then obviously this season you've transitioned back to quarterback. It's a position you haven't played in a while. I think last time you really played it significantly was when you were a freshman playing on the JV team.
Yep.
How has that transition back to that position been? I mean, has it been a challenge for you?
It's been a pretty smooth transition. Even these last couple of years, I played multiple different positions, so I knew a lot of what everyone was doing. So making the trade to quarterback, I had to fine-tune a lot of different things, but for the most part, I knew the offense in and out, so it was a pretty smooth transition.
Right. And like last week's guest, Noah McGuire-Albert, he was
right.
He was replacing, the greatest player in Shelby High School history. And while Alex is kind of in a similar situation in that the guy he's replacing, it was Trey Williams, was Hillsdale's career passing leader. He set all the records for passing yardage, passing touchdowns. I mean, do you learn things from what you saw him do?
Yeah, I was always a part of the team with him. He started his sophomore year for the first time on the varsity team, and that year I wasn't much a part of the team. But his junior year, I moved to offense a little bit when I was a sophomore, and I could just be with him in the huddle, see how he was as a player. He would talk through us, especially during practices, on what he was reading, and I just always try to pay attention to him, learn from that.
What's that first snap like? Is it a little overwhelming? Is it you feel like you're where you were supposed to be the whole time?
The first game this year was definitely my most stressful start ever. Walking out of the locker room, there was a lot of butterflies in my stomach that I hadn't felt for a long time.
Sure.
And then, are there things? Obviously, last year you're an All-Ohio defensive back. Are there things that you see, or do you approach quarterbacking from a safety's point of view? I mean, are there things that you're looking for as a safety that maybe that translates to offense? I mean, you know what you're looking for as a safety. Do you try to avoid doing those things as a quarterback?
See, my freshman year, a lot of the times I was told by the coaches on what to watch out for from a safety. So now, once I made the transition to a safety look on things, I tried to actually look at as how a quarterback would look at things, and that's how I almost did the opposite of what you were saying. I, as a safety, looked at it as a quarterback would and tried to stop what they were doing.
Right on.
It's obviously way more common in high school than it is in college or even the NFL, being a dual side of the ball
especially
athlete.
at a small school.
Right. But I just think that it would help you as being able to, I mean, maybe not if you're an offensive lineman or whatever, but I feel like being a quarterback, you'd be able to read defenses a little bit better.
Right. I mean, you can diagnose things, I would think, a little bit, just approach things a little differently, I would think.
Yeah, running defense, being on the defensive side of the ball, I learn all the different positions and all what everyone's doing, all the coverages. So then when I trade to offense, I can have a little better look at looking around and seeing what people are going to be doing.
Right. And you guys, Trey was more of a traditional pocket passer, I guess. I mean, you guys have kind of changed the offense a little bit this year. Just talk a little bit about what you guys are doing. I mean, don't give away any secrets, but what are you doing differently this year?
Trey always had a really strong arm. He was accurate. He was just, like you said, a traditional pocket passer, and I mean, I've been away from the quarterback spot for a couple of years, so I came in very rusty, and I was last year played a little bit of slot receiver, and so I'm a little better on my legs than what Trey was, and so this year we're trying to take advantage of that a little bit more than what we did in the past.
And I thought, I mean, I've covered you guys quite a bit here in the early portion of the season, and I mean, offensively, it seems like, and again, you know better than me, but it seems like you were. I mean, the offense is really, really dynamic this year. I mean, there's a lot of different. And it's not that you guys weren't dynamic last year because you scored a bunch of points, but I mean, it seems like you have a lot of weapons at your disposal. I guess how is it nice to have a guy like Garrett Smith and Garrett Goodwin and guys and McFadden on the outside, guys who can make plays for you?
Oh, yeah, it's a great benefit. When you only have one person who can make plays, and the defense can really key in on that and try to shut things down. But this year we have we're lucky to have a lot of different athletes who can make a lot of different styles of runs and just benefit our offense in a lot of different ways.
You even see that on the National Football League level with like Josh Gordon and Jarvis Landry being able to both be able to catch for the Browns for like the first time maybe
I mean,
ever in my lifetime.
I don't think it's it's not a government secret or anything like that.
Options are better than nothing.
The more good guys you got, I think the better off you're going to be.
Right.
Yeah. Well, as any sport evolves too, you see a trend in basketball. Guys are getting bigger and they're covering more space. I think you're seeing that trend come more slowly to football, in that you're asked to do more per position. So the more versatility you bring, as we bring analytics into each game, as you bring in, the best player in baseball now is way better than the previous generation, without steroids, by the way.
Right. And I think that is kind of trickling down to the high school level. We had Clay Caudell in here a couple of weeks ago, a Mansfield senior kid. And he's a kid who he plays with his hand in the dirt. He plays a defensive end. Offensively, he's a tight end. He's a H-back. He's a fullback. I mean, you're just asked to do a lot more things now. And I think that, the more versatile you are, I guess, the better off you are.
Yeah, the more you can do, the better fit you are for the team, because if one play you need someone to block, the next play you need someone to catch the ball, the best thing you can do is just be able to do everything.
Yeah, instead of, shuffling personnel in and out, and you have your blocking tight end and you have your pass catching tight end instead. That's one and the same guy now, and it's
which I'm sure coaches love, because then you're gonna, by the third quarter, you're gonna know if the same guy comes in every time to just be the blocker.
Right.
Oh, I wonder what's gonna happen.
Yeah, and now that you have these guys who like a Caudell who's versatile, he can help clear the way for a powerful running game, or else he can go out and catch pass. And you got to pay attention to that. And you guys kind of have a guy like that in Ty Williams, a sophomore and Trey's younger brother. He's a guy who seems like he's a pretty physical player. He led you in tackles last year as a freshman. And I think you've thrown a couple touchdown passes to him this year.
Yeah, this year he moved into the tight end spot. The last year we didn't really have a tight end very that much, but this year he came into the spot. And for the most part, I mean, he comes in, he does a lot of blocking, but he's come in, he's caught 2 touchdowns, and he just has good hands and can make plays on whether he's just blocking or whether he's trying to catch the ball.
Sure. Now you guys, you're getting ready to start conference action this week. The Wayne County Athletic League, for people over here who don't know, it's a really high caliber of small school football. I mean, it's not the Midwest Athletic Conference. Don't get me confused. That's the MAC is out on the Indiana line, and it's Coldwater and Marion Local and St. John. All the schools.
People you see in
they
October.
win a state. That conference wins a state championship in multiple divisions almost every year. In fact, it's probably harder to win a conference championship for those teams than it is to win a state championship, quite frankly. The Wayne County League will never be confused for that, but the Wayne County League is a very good football conference. It's a very physical football conference. I think last year it sent 3 teams to the playoffs. The year before, half the conference made the playoffs, like 4 out of the 8. What are your thoughts, I guess, on Wayne County League football? It seems like you guys, you got to buckle it up because you got to get after it every week.
When you come into a Wayne County game, doesn't matter what the record is going into the game. The other team could be coming in, they're 1-2. Well, that doesn't matter, because they're going to be there to play. They're going to be physical. They're going to be hard workers, and their record doesn't show the team that they are.
And Hillsdale has kind of quietly become one of the better teams in that conference. I mean, for a lot of years, it wasn't. And I think a lot of that had to do with, and it's certainly not to take away from any of the previous coaching staffs, but Tom Williams, Trey and Ty's father, came in. He was an Ashland High School graduate. I think he played quarterback at Ashland High School. I actually played American Legion baseball with him during the black and white days, way long ago. But he came in and he kind of rebuilt that program. I think he stepped down this past season in July for personal reasons. But in 15 seasons, he won 98 games. that's almost unheard of at Hillsdale. What was it like playing for Tom for these past 3 years?
He's always been a part of my football career. Even in Pee Wee, we'd see him around. We know who he was. He was a very important person to us because that was always our goal to go and play for him because that's just what we all want to do. And he was just a very important person in the public.
Right. And Trevor Klein was, I guess, promoted because he was on staff previously. And Trevor was a guy who quarterbacked Hillsdale to a regional championship game appearance. And in 2010, I covered that game too. Not that I'm trying to show my age here, but I covered that one too. And Trevor, you've worked with him previously, I believe. Has that kind of eased the transition, I guess, to being a high school quarterback again? I mean, you having him to work with.
Yeah, in junior high when I was a quarterback, he'd come over and we'd throw together, and he'd show me different tricks that he learned in the varsity level, which would help me in junior high. So, and then going into this season, he would work with me over the summer, and it was just a lot of help because we were already friendly and knew each other well, and it was just made the transition a little bit smoother. And the entire team knows him well because he's always been a part of the program since he's graduated.
Right. And Coach Williams is still around. I mean, he's just not quite as visible as he was in the past. I think he's still, there with you guys on Friday night. So I would imagine that's kind of reassuring to still have him there, right?
Yeah, he's still our defensive coordinator. He comes to the majority of our practices and still does his best to be there whenever he can. So he's still a big part of the team.
Right. Now, last week, you guys got off to a 2-0 start. Great start. I can't imagine going any better for you the first couple weeks of the season. You had a big win. I think you scored almost set a school record for points in a game against Mapleton. You guys played well against Crestview. This past week against a Ashland County rival, Loudonville, things didn't go well. For whatever the reason, you guys didn't play your best game. They may have been inspired. They had not won for a long time. They are a traditionally proud program. Are there lessons, I guess, you take away from a loss like that, and how do you use that going forward here?
Just the entire team came in with the mentality that we're just going to steamroll our way through and get into the league. Well, we figured out that we need to show up every single week and we need to play to the best of our ability. And if we do that, then we're going to have a successful season.
I've the question, this is a lot of transition it sounds like your team has been through in a short period of time. When you consider a successful team and then you have to come back and hopefully repeat that success, how does that look like in terms of team composition from year to year and adjustments, perhaps not just for you, but the whole team?
Every single year you have a lot of seniors graduate. That's just how high school football works. We had to fill in, I believe, 3 different offensive lineman positions, a new wide receiver, and the quarterback position. That's just the offense. So it's going to happen every single year. People know that next year these are going to be people graduating, so we need to work hard in the offseason so we can fill in and we can do the best job so the program continues getting better.
And that's especially true at a school like Hillsdale where your population supply isn't just going to be what it's going to be when you go 50 miles south to any part of Columbus, right?
Yeah, so we've all known each other since we playing together since we were in Pee Wee football, so we all had basically the same positions that we were playing back then. So we've been building up to where we are now. And a lot of people had to play both sides of the ball just because we don't have the bodies to fill in every single position with a new guy.
And you touched on it just briefly there. Hillsdale, for a lot of years, there was no youth football league available, and I think that really, it took its toll on the program. I mean, if you have kids playing their first football when they're in the seventh and 8th grade, I mean, you'd like to think that's not too late for kids to start playing football, but in a lot of ways it is. How important was, getting involved early in that youth program?
When I went into the 5th grade, I didn't know what a quarterback was, and I was told, hey, you should try out for this position. So I did, and, I haven't looked back since, but if I didn't start being a quarterback until 7th grade, I would have been so far behind from where I ended up.
And if he didn't know what a quarterback was in the 5th grade, then his uncle didn't do a very good job of preparing him. But, you touched on it. These are guys that you've been playing together for so long now. It's like you can anticipate each other's moves without, speaking. I would imagine that is reassuring when things start to get a little difficult. These are guys you've been through the battles with before.
Yeah, we're all comfortable with each other. We're all best friends on and off the field, so that helps a lot. It really is a brotherhood when we go out there on Friday night.
I think chemistry is great, even anywhere, right? Even in work or football, where like if someone messes up, you can still sort of be like, "Hey, dude, you messed up. We need to like really get on our horse here." And there's really no hurt feelings because you're just like, "Yeah, like that's my boy."
Yeah, and
so the chemistry is a great thing to have on a team.
Absolutely. I
of
mean,
any type. Really.
Anyone who's played a varsity team sport, or it doesn't even have to be a varsity team sport, just any team sport at all. You can't do it all by yourself. And
right.
As much as you'd like to think you can, you got to have, depending on the sport, you got to have, a handful of other guys who are out there. And PJ Fleck says it all the time. You got to have guys rowing the boat in the same direction at the same rate. And as cliched as that has become because of that, I mean, it's absolutely true.
It's how Richland Source rolls.
Yeah, absolutely. We are all rowing the boat together. This week, you guys opened Wayne County League play against Northwestern. For whatever the reason, it's been a rough 3 years for you guys against Northwestern. I think they've beaten you all 3 years of your varsity career. What is it about them that for whatever why do you guys struggle with those guys? Do you think?
I have no idea. It always seems that every week we come out to play them, we just don't show up being our best selves. So we tend to struggle that week. I'm not sure why.
Right, and part of it is they're a good program too. I mean, they are one of those teams along with you guys that are traditionally fighting for a playoff spot. And I think that's really what prepares you guys for the playoffs, is that every week is kind of like a playoff game, because you got to win 7 or 8 games to get in, and it's none of those are easy wins in that conference.
So yeah, last year we finished in our league third, but then we go into the playoffs and we start playing these teams that were first and second in their league, but they still didn't even come close to the competition that we had already faced in the regular season, just because their league wasn't as tough as ours was.
Right. It seems like the playoffs sort of start in week 1 for you guys.
Well, yeah, not so much week 1, but week 4 for sure is when conference play starts. I mean, you got a Norwayne team that has won a state championship not too long ago. You got Dalton team that reached a regional championship game like you guys did last year, and probably, and that's a conversation for a different time, but it's probably a team that should have played in the state semifinals. I'll fill you guys in on what happened off the air, but it was pretty dramatic how they lost that game. That said, I mean, there's real good competition every week, and that prepares you for. I mean, and I'm not taking shot at any conferences, but if you're comparing small school conferences in the area, I'd say the Wayne County League compares size-wise favorably with Firelands Conference, and the Firelands Conference has Norwalk St. Paul, who has been atop that league for a lot of years, and then it's there's a pretty big gap in between that number 1 team and 2 or 3 or 4, and there are times when teams jump up and they'll qualify for the playoffs. Monroeville does periodically, Crestview does. So it's certainly not bad football by any stretch of the imagination, but I think that the difference between top and bottom is a little bit more dramatic.
I think, speaking as I've lived on both sides of that conference, the east side is where I grew up, and then the west side is where I've ultimately settled. And I think one of the things that maybe makes it unique is something Alex touched on. There's a lot of long-term stability and program tradition that's really passed on generation to generation, and that's a rare thing and a special thing that you can't always just create, and that very much exists in that league. And that's why I think when conference play starts, you really look forward to that's a perennial thing.
Right. And same way to an even greater degree in the Midwest Athletic Conference, my older brother and all of his brothers won state championships at Coldwater or Marion Local, and it's your turn, and you got a lot to live up to. And
you can't let down the family or the city.
Right, right, and that's gone on for so many years now that there's probably a second generation of. Versailles is in that conference. Versailles beat Loudonville in the Division IV, I think, state championship game in 1990. So those guys are probably have had sons that are playing now. And it just gets that's how it gets built up. And Clear Fork is a good example here locally. They've been going to the playoffs for years and years, and I think that my dad did it, so now it's my turn. That's kind of the mentality down there.
Well, we sort of talked about that with McGuire Albert last week, with his dad.
Sure.
And Shelby football has a lot of tradition, and so does Lucas. I think that ever since moving here, I've had a lot of appreciation for Ohio high school football for that reason, because it's like a lifeblood that everyone seems to really share.
Yeah, and especially a team that goes to a playoffs, you can, Hillsdale, you could turn out the lights in Hayesville and Drumsville on playoff nights because everyone's in their car,
Right.
kind of like Hickory, in basketball, state basketball in Indiana. It's the same situation. Everyone is there, so it's something that the communities take a lot of pride in.
Is that something you think, Alex, that's helped you going from an established coach to a relatively young coach? And can you speak to a little bit to that?
Yeah, the entire community has been familiar with Trevor Klein. He was the quarterback for the team a couple years back, so obviously they know him from that. And they all know that he's a great guy, he's a great coach, he's very knowledgeable, so they trust him in taking over on the program.
Right. And, it's Hillsdale for a lot of years has been known as a softball powerhouse, and rightfully so. They won another state championship last spring. There's no reason to think that they won't challenge for more of those here in the upcoming years, but and there were times when boys basketball was, but right now it's like in a cycle where football is king over there, and that's got to be for a football player, it's got to be pretty neat.
Yeah, football and softball, those are the two main sports going on right now. A generation back in football, it wasn't exactly a team you necessarily want to be a part of, but since Coach Williams came in and started things off, we gradually built up to where we are now, and then now Coach Klein is in, and he's taking the bull by the horns, and he's continuing in the same direction.
Right. Going forward here as conference play approaches, what are your expectations? You guys were picked to finish pretty high in the league, despite some pretty significant losses at key places. The other, area media representatives evidently have a high opinion on what you're doing. From the inside, what do you guys expect here going forward?
Every week is going to be a tough game. That's just how the Wayne County Athletic League works. We just have to work hard. We have to focus on the next upcoming opponent. So right now, we're about to play Northwestern, and that's the only team we're talking about this week. So that's just how we're going to go through the rest of the season.
Well, good. I think we're going to take a quick break here. Can you stick around till after the break?
Oh, yes, I can.
We'll take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
And welcome back to the West Fourth and Goal podcast. I'm David Yoder. And before we get the second half of the podcast kicked off, I want to ask you one question. Have you signed up for Startup Weekend Mansfield yet?
Yes, I have. I've been talking about how cool it sounds for the last 2-3 weeks, and talked with the boss man today, and I am signed up and going, and I am very excited.
And while I share your enthusiasm, when you're a high school sports reporter, you can't afford to take a weekend in September off. So
right.
As much as I'd like to be there, I'm gonna have to take a hard pass.
Gotcha. Well, why don't we finish the read? Go ahead and tell
Right.
us why people are so excited.
And
Why I'm so excited, I guess.
For
I should
my
really
part,
say.
I would totally be there, but I'm best man at my brother's wedding. Is
Excuses, no.
right.
Priorities.
Duty calls. September 28th, 29th, and 30th, Mansfield, Ohio will be opening and hosting its first ever Startup Weekend. The cost now is only $50 to attend the weekend-long event that includes 7 catered meals, networking opportunities with successful entrepreneurs, and all the internet and coffee you can consume. The event will be held right here at Ideal Works, Ohio on 40 West 4th Street in downtown Mansfield. Search Startup Weekend on Facebook to learn more and buy your ticket. I was informed that on September 15th, the cost of a ticket will rise, so hurry and get the early bird special for Startup Weekend today.
All right, thanks, David. Now is the time in the show where we traditionally rehash things that happened last week and then take a look forward to this weekend. And Alex, while you're here, we're joined again by Hillsdale quarterback and safety Alex Becker. You would think his uncle would remember that. Apparently not. We'll start with Hillsdale. Last week you guys went to Loudonville. You guys were a pretty heavy favorite, and things didn't go well. You end up losing 21-11. And we talked a little bit off air earlier today. That's a Loudonville team that hasn't won. They were winless last year. they had dropped their first 2 games this year. It's a backyard rivalry. You guys have had an awful lot of success here in the last few years. That's kind of like their Super Bowl right now. I mean, not to take anything away from the program, but that's a win against a Hillsdale team is a sort of thing that can get them jump started. Did perhaps maybe you'd like to think you're focused on every game, but maybe did you guys overlook an opponent that last week?
Yeah, we came out and we were just kind of looking ahead a little further than we should have. They came out and they brought their A game and we didn't, so it came back and hunted us.
Right. Mansfield Senior got a big win last week, 31-21 over a previously undefeated Westerville North team.
That was their first win, right?
Senior high, they had won the previous week. They won in triple overtime.
Right.
They blocked an extra point
My
at
mistake.
Sandusky Perkins. That said, though, Westerville North traditionally hasn't been very strong, but they were 2-0. They are a division higher than Mansfield Senior. They're a Division II school. To beat an undefeated school. I mean, that's a windfall of computer points for senior high. And I tell you what, Mansfield Senior kind of came out and took it to those guys. It was 28-7 at halftime. It was 31-7 early in the third quarter, and then I think North scored a couple. Yeah, they scored a couple second half touchdowns, but that's a type of win that can really jumpstart a Mansfield Senior.
You got to feel good for the Tigers. I know they had a disappointing week 1,
Sure,
where they came out and they would really like to have that one back.
Right.
I think if you ask them.
Yeah, and we talked to Clay a couple weeks ago about that. Maybe those guys had heard how good they were supposed to be, and and sometimes when you read your own press clippings, bad things happen.
Yeah, that's one where you look for them to trend up.
Right. And I think last week, super excited for Madison and first-year coach Dave Stupka. They went out, and it's been a long stretch for the Rams. I think they had lost 19 in a row. Akron North came to town, and Madison got their first win, 40-0. They jumped out. I think it was 19-0 at halftime. I mean, it's got to just be such a relief for those kids to finally be able to punch one.
Yeah, I mean, no one likes losing all the time.
Right.
So, I mean, even if I would be surprised if morale wasn't higher.
Yeah,
during
absolutely.
practice this
that's a
week.
whole like mindset that you have to break. I mean, you gotta kind of reinvent the culture, and that doesn't happen overnight.
And
it
it
takes a
should
while.
be pointed out that when you beat a team after losing you beat a team 40-0 after losing that many games in a row, that's also got to be a huge sort of fresh air.
Right. I'm sure that the ringing of the victory bell out on
Right.
Easley Lane was especially sweet for those guys.
Right.
Speaking of one-sided games, Shelby beat Willard 63-0. We had McGuire Albert in here last week, the Shelby quarterback. They were coming off a close game against Lexington team. They had beaten, I think, it was a 3-point game the following week, or the previous week. I think that they had something to say. They had something to prove, I guess, and they went out and did it.
How Curt, you've watched a lot of football, and Shelby has had a lot of program development, and they've been on the rise for several years. Is it too early to say how good they look?
It's hard because, I mean, we're talking about a Shelby team that graduated the greatest class in the history of Shelby football last year. I mean, it's not often that you have a Division I quarterback or, Brennan Armstrong, who's playing at Virginia this year. And they had a super group of athletes. That said, they got a super group this year. And Alex, did you see them in the 7-on-7s this summer at all? I know they were at Ashland. I didn't know if you guys played them or.
No, this summer we never did go against Shelby.
Right, but I know that they banged heads with Mansfield Senior at a couple of different 7-on-7s. I mean, Shelby, there's certainly no shortage of athletic kids over there. I mean, McGuire's a big, tall kid who stands in the pocket real tall and throws a good ball. And Uriah Schwemley's a guy who won the state high jump championship last year in Division II. That's a luxury. I mean, just throw it in the neighborhood, and he'll go up and get it for you. They have a big one coming up. We'll get to that in a little bit. Last week, Clear Fork went to Jonathan Alder, and I tell you what, the Colts are for real. They hung one on Alder 49-10. Last year, Clear Fork won a lot of really close games, and some people thought that they were winning with smoke and mirrors. There hadn't been a close one so far this year. It seems like last year really set the table for this year, and that's a team that might be able to I mean, they were undefeated last year during the regular season. but again, they played a handful of really close games. This year, I mean, they're setting themselves up for another pretty historic run, I think.
Who's their stud? Is it Trammell?
Yeah, Trayvon Trammell is a running back. I believe that's how it's pronounced. If it's not, I apologize. But yeah, he I think in his first 2 touches 2 weeks ago, he had 150 yards and 2 touchdowns on 2 carries. So
we got to get him on the podcast.
Yeah, we absolutely do. We got to. I mean, and it's kind of overdue because they were undefeated last year and we didn't have anyone. So if you're listening, Dave Carroll, the head coach, we're going to come your way here in the next.
Expect a text message this week.
Absolutely. And this is of interest for you, Noah, because you'll be covering them this week. Gallion beat a previously undefeated Upper Sandusky team 34-0, and Gallion remains unbeaten.
Yeah.
You saw them early in the year.
Yeah.
Was there any reason? Did you see anything that would suggest that maybe this is a team that's gonna hang around and challenge for a playoff spot?
You know, it was hard to tell because unfortunately I saw them in week 1 when, you know, that's typically you're sort of figuring out your team.
Sure.
And they were playing Bucyrus, who just really has been struggling for the past few years. But Elias Middleton is their starting quarterback. I believe this is his first year under center, maybe his second but his first starting quarterback job, I believe. And the team looked great. They built up a 20-0 lead in the first half. They ended up winning 37-13. They had the running clock, my favorite part of football, the entire second half, and 131 yards and a touchdown for Middleton in the first half.
And I tell you, he put on a show this past week. I was doing some research for their game this week, and it was ridiculous, the numbers he put up against an Upper Sandusky team that hadn't lost. So
yeah.
I mean, to do it against a team that has struggled is one thing. To do it against an opponent that has had some success in the early going, that's something else entirely.
Yeah, I've got family in Upper Sandusky, and my cousin plays trombone in the marching band, so I'm sure he didn't enjoy watching
had a rough week.
His team get pummeled.
Ontario beat Black River 14-6, and Alex, you guys did see Ontario in the preseason. That was your Jamboree game. Ontario's 2-1. I think you guys may have beaten them in the preseason. I mean, what were your thoughts on Ontario? I mean, did it seem like a team that had improved since last year?
Yeah, we scrimmaged them last year as well, and this year they came out almost like a brand new team. They're a lot more physical, a lot more ready to play the game of football. So this year I'm expecting them. I think they'll do a lot better than they did last year.
That's got to be more fun to play a team who is almost brand new, because it's sort of like getting to play a brand new team that you've never seen before in that way.
Yeah, when you play the same team every year, you come out and you know what to expect. But when you come against a different opponent, it's another thing that we see in the playoffs. When you come against a new opponent, you're a little more excited. You're going to learn something new from the way they play football, and their offense and defense is different.
Right.
Also probably helps you keep being focused on the game too, right?
It keeps things a little fresh.
Yeah.
I mean, when you play the same teams over and over again, there's no secrets. I mean, you know what they're going to do. They know what you're going to do. It's just, who's going to come out and stop it. A little different situation for Loudonville game last week in that they had a new coach, Kevin Malterich, who was spent a year at Madison. He was at West Holmes. He runs a traditional wing T offense. You guys probably don't see a lot of that.
No, there might see 2 other opponents who go into that a little bit, but no one's going to run it as often or as much as what Loudonville did.
Yeah, and it gave you guys some fits there. One other game before we look ahead to this week, Northmore beat Lucas. It was kind of an upset. Well, I don't know. I mean, Northmore was very good last year.
I think last year too.
Yeah,
I think I covered that game.
And so it's not a huge upset, and again, it's not the end of the world for Lucas, because history has shown that you can lose a couple games and still make it into the playoffs. You guys know something about that. Hillsdale, I don't think, has ever had an undefeated team. And I talked to Trevor Klein about that last week. I said, as disappointing as this loss is, you guys have never run the table, and I mean, it just shows you that you can stumble once or twice maybe in the regular season and still get in. That said, I would imagine there's a renewed enthusiasm down at Lucas with Coach Spittler, because
yeah, I'm sure he was upset whether
absolutely.
the game was an upset or not.
Right. And this week, looking ahead to this week, and we talked a little bit about it, Alex. Northwestern is at Hillsdale, and Northwestern has had your guys' number for a few years. Without giving away too many secrets, what's it going to take?
Well, like Loudonville is our rival in regular season or just in normal. Northwestern is our rival for the league play. So we're coming out. We're going to be come off the ball a little harder than what we did the last couple of weeks. So we're going to come out hot and hopefully score quick and score often.
Right on. Mansfield Senior is at West Holmes, and that all of a sudden is a very big game in terms of Ohio Cardinal Conference implications. 'Cause Senior High is 2-1. They've won two in a row. I don't know if maybe I didn't do my homework well enough in the preseason, but I didn't necessarily think that West Holmes would be sitting here undefeated. So Mansfield Senior is going to Millersburg, and all of a sudden that's a big game with a windfall of computer points on the line.
You're going to that game too, right?
Yeah. I'm headed down to Millersburg, down 39. It gets a little
Gets a
curvy.
little hilly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a little curvy down.
You should
there.
listen to the West 4th and Goal podcast.
On my way. I'll have some spare time.
Yeah.
Mount Vernon is at Lex. Lex is still looking for that first win. Mount Vernon, I think, is 1-2. And we talked about it last week. Those Lexington kids certainly, they're great kids down there, and they certainly deserve something good to happen. And maybe it'll happen for them this weekend.
Yeah, I unfortunately don't know much about Mount Vernon,
Right.
but just 'cause it's sort of out of our coverage zone. But
Right,
Knox Pages has it.
They graduated a big class of pretty talented football players last year, and it was a lot of the same guys, I think, that played on the basketball team that shared an Ohio Cardinal Conference championship. So they have a lot of holes to fill. That said, things have it's disappointing to be an 0-3, but it's kind of a fresh start for Lexington because as disappointing as 0-3 is, now it's conference play, and you can still challenge for a conference championship.
Yeah, especially when you have a lot of parts there and you feel like it hasn't come together. It's blank slate, like
Right.
you said.
And Lex had some struggles against Orville last week. Cade Stover, I think, was used more as a traditional running back. I think he rushed for, and I'm not certain, I guess, but I think he rushed for about 100 yards. When you got a guy who's going to Ohio State, and you know a little bit about this, Alex, you saw Lex in the 7-on-7 over at Ashland University. That caliber athlete just looks a little different.
You go on the field and you notice him. He stands out. You can tell that he's a different kind of player than what the rest of us are, and he's going to play a whole new game than what we're used to.
Shelby is at Bellevue. This is a traditional rivalry game. Shelby is undefeated. That comes as no surprise. Bellevue hasn't won a game, which comes as a huge surprise to a lot of people who pay attention to this sort of stuff. And that said, I don't think that I think Bellevue is going to have Shelby's full attention this week because the very last thing you want is to go up there and get derailed by a team that hasn't won yet. And conversely, I think that Bellevue can get things back on the rails here if they are able to pull off that upset. There are a couple of huge games in the Mid-Ohio Athletic Conference. Marion Pleasant is at Gallion. Pleasant is 3-0, and they have just been pounding people through the first 3 weeks of the season. I guess Gallion, we'll find out exactly what Gallion is made of here.
Yeah, I think potentially, as I said, I've only covered them once so far, but after their what I consider to be pummeling of Bucyrus,
Sure.
Coach Dick was not super impressed with what he saw. He thought that they could have played a much more clean game, and he felt like there's definitely things to work on for the next week. So I think that if they're able to get all of that squared, it should be a really great game, and it's certainly exciting record-wise. But I'm excited to travel up there.
Sure.
And in terms of atmosphere, there are few environments year in, year out like Gallion. That community comes out for their kids, like many around here, but especially there. That'll be a fun atmosphere.
Another fun atmosphere will be on the hill at Clear Fork High School at the Colt Corral. The Colts are undefeated 3-0. North Union also undefeated 3-0. This is a game that's going to go a long way in determining who wins the conference, I think, and like some of these other games, there's going to be some computer points up for grabs here, and you're going to kind of establish the winner of that game is going to establish themselves in their region, which I think is you don't like to look too far down the road, but people like me look too far down the road.
Week 4 is the beginning of things taking shape.
Right.
You can only change the math so much. It gets more and more marginal as you approach the end of the season. So yeah, big game.
Right. Marion Harding is at Ontario, and we touched on it just briefly. Ontario, I think, they have a new first-year coach out there. Maybe not a lot of people expected them to be sitting here at 2-1, but here they are, and all of a sudden, they're another team in Division 4, Region 14 with Clear Fork and with Gallion and with Shelby. All those teams are in the same region. all of a sudden, when that starts to take shape, that's exciting for guys like me who, it's awesome when all the area teams are good and every game towards the end of the season means something. And then you get into week 11 and potentially some all area matchups in the playoffs. And if Ontario continues to do what they're doing, they position themselves well to do that.
Curt, at what point, sort of picking off what David had just said, at what point in the season does the football schedule really start getting more exciting to you?
I mean, it just depends. I mean, I tell people all the time it's a lot funner when Mansfield Senior and Madison are both good, so that week 10 is super exciting. And that goes for just I mean, it certainly helps in terms of people paying attention when everyone is winning.
Right.
Of course, when head-to-head stuff starts to come along, not everyone can win.
Right.
But I mean, it's exciting when you have 2 3-0 teams in week 4.
Sure.
Just like it's exciting to have 2 6-0 teams in week 7. It just depends on it just really depends on the situation, the scenario.
Gotcha.
Finally, Lucas is at Troy Christian. I believe Troy Christian is undefeated. Lucas is coming off that loss we talked about. I would imagine everyone is refocused down in Cubs country. I mean, Coach Spittler does a nice job down there, and I'm sure he's got everyone's attention this week.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I certainly have no idea about the statistic, but I wonder how often they lose back-to-back games.
It hadn't happened down there for a while, I don't think.
Okay. That's what I was going to guess.
I'm sure that
there's a reason, and his name is Spittler.
Right, and I'm sure that is something that's come up a time or two in practice this week. So.
Right.
Well, there you have it. I think that's going to do it for this week. So that's going to do it for week 2. If you enjoyed this episode of West 4th and Goal, subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. We'll be back again next week with another episode. Don't forget to check out richlandsource.com/sports/football this Friday night after the games for our feature stories, photo galleries, and more than 90 regional high school football game summaries. Thanks for listening.